Good afternoon, and welcome to the Center Stage Seminar Series. My name is Tiffany Willoughby, Research Education Programs and Outreach Manager in the Office of Research at the University of Texas at Dallas. I will be your moderator. Joining me today to speak on intrapreneurship is Dr. Larry Hornbeck. Larry J. Hornbeck graduated from Case Western Reserve University in 1974 with a PhD in physics. He joined the faculty of the University of Texas at Dallas in 2017 following a distinguished 43-year career at Texas Instruments that began in late 1973 in TI's Central Research Laboratories. In the early 1980s, Dr. Hornbeck pioneered the development of a high-speed binary spatial light modulator, SLM technology, known as a Digital Micromirror Device, DMD, an array of millions of digital micromirrors integrated along with CMOS control circuitry on a silicone chip. Dr. Hornbeck demonstrated the first DMD in late 1987. In 1992, TI began massive investments to commercialize the most complex multidisciplinary technology in the semiconductor world. Known commercially as the DLP chip, the DMD is the basis for innovative products across a wide range of applications, from digital cinema and laser television to 3D printing, LIDAR, hyperspectral imaging, and more. Dr. Hornbeck is the single-named inventor of the foundational patents for DMD technology, including the seminal patent US 5,061,049 spatial light modulator and method. Upon joining the faculty, he started the Center for Digital MEMS, the first university research center of its kind. CDM's purpose is to develop a fundamental understanding of the complex interacting mechanisms that limit the DMD's performance, reliability, and scalability. Hornbeck's pioneering work has earned him wide-ranging recognition, from election to the National Academy of Engineering to winning an Academy Award of Merit, Oscar statuette. He is a fellow of the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers, SMPTE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, IEEE, and the International Society for Optical Engineering, SPIE. Dr. Hornbeck, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. Hello, everyone. This is going to be just a lighthearted exploration of 43 years of my career. It's not going to be all that boring. It's a tale of digital micromirrors, fearless trailblazing, entrepreneurship, big-time corporate venturing, while at Texas Instruments. We're going to talk about following a cow path. Interesting. Unless you know how the DMD chip works and projects images, the rest of the talk won't make a whole lot of sense. And then we're going to do a historical tour of DMD technology, the Digital Micromirror Device. And believe me, it's a Trailblazer, that's me, centric view. You know, there are thousands of people, hundreds of millions of dollars, and yada, yada. And so it wasn't just me. But the reason for me giving you a Trailblazer-centric view as the Trailblazer, as the inventor, is to let you get some notion of what it's like to be what I call a fearless Trailblazer. At that point, then you'll know enough to understand the 9 fearless trailblazing episodes that we're going to look at up close, and what had to be done to end up with what we had at Texas Instruments. And from that, you can sort of derive what the characteristics of fearless trailblazer might be. And so we'll have a list of those at the end, and then questions and comments. Okay. Following the cow path. So there was a wonderful poem written by Sam Walter Foss And I don't know exactly when. I think it was the late 1890s, called the cow path. You probably heard the expression, are you paving the cow path and following the cow path? And what's that got to do with entrepreneurship? And by the way, are fearless trailblazer entrepreneurs somehow connected necessarily, or would you have an entrepreneur who wasn't fearless? I don't know. We'll explore that. And what are some of the characteristics? And that's what we're going to hopefully decide at the very end. You know, what are those characteristics? Well, I just wanted to let you see the beginnings of this poem. One day through the primeval wood, the calf walked home as good calves should, but made a trail all bent askew, a crooked trail, as all calves do. I live in the country, I see it all the time. Since then, 300 years have fled, and I infer the calf is dead. But still behind he left his trail, and thereon hangs my mortal tale. Now, it's actually quite a long poem. Faust goes on to say that a lone dog followed the path, and then a sheep, and then a flock of sheep, and so they're making this pathway. And later on, he says, many men wound in and out and dodged and turned and bent about and uttered words of righteous wrath because 'twas such a crooked path. Imagine they're complaining about that, but still they followed. Do not laugh. The first migrations of that calf. So Faust goes on to say that the forest path became a lane. The lane became a road. The road became a village street. Then the central street of a metropolis. And so I'll pick up again in the later verse here. Each day 100,000 route followed the zigzag calf about, and o'er his crooked journey went the traffic of a continent. 100,000 men were led by one calf near 3 centuries dead. They followed still his crooked way and lost 100 years a day, for thus such reverence is lent to well-established precedent. I really encourage you to read this poem. And it's a lot like, you know, my takeaway from this back in 2019 when I read this first time is that if you chart your course, if you're doing research like me, by group consensus, that's a lot like following meandering cow path. And you'll eventually get somewhere. The team will eventually get somewhere, but it may not be the place of your choosing. One of my favorite quotes, I gave a speech about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, and someone in the audience, a TIer, Texas Instruments person, later presented me with a framed version of this speech. It's a speech that our 26th president, Theodore Roosevelt, made actually in Paris, France, and it was part of a Citizenship in a Republic speech. And the first part of it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. And he goes on to say, the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is not effort without error and shortcomings. Amen. But who does actually strive to do the deeds. See, he's this person is actually in the arena, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, so that himself, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly. So that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. You know, that's the thing. If you're not in the arena, you're safe. You're safe from failure. Okay, so anyway, there I am in 2005 as a fearless trailblazer. You can tell because I'm pointing. I have no idea what I'm pontificating on. It was at a meeting. I think we were awarding. I think it was a presentation, a meeting where we elevating some of our technical staff people. That's what it was. Anyway, let me go back. At the top of this chart, and let me find this laser pointer thingy. All right, there we go. I joined Texas Instruments in '73. I actually began developing CCD technology and was already a fearless trailblazer and made some really tough decisions. It's actually been written about. I'll tell you about that later. The word intrapreneur was coined in 1978, and we'll talk about that and its relationship to fearless trailblazing. The analog dark age is a period of time when I developed light modulators that were analog in nature. I'll tell you about some other things that went on there that predates this moment, 1987, the Digital Micromirror Device. I call that the age of digital enlightenment. At least we had precise modulation of light, but many, many new problems we didn't have. Texas Instruments venture period, they began in 1992, pumping hundreds of millions of dollars into investing in this technology. First products out in '96, and we'll talk a little bit about some of this stuff and then an update right here. The point of going through this is to let you see the path before we talk about what the fearless trailblazer did, the decisions that had to be made. Okay, so before we do that, well, okay, so there's a patent wall of fame that used to be in one of our TI buildings. And this is just a quote, and actually I made this quote sort of offhand to somebody, and it ended up getting published. I don't take any credit for having selected it, and then the next thing I knew, they put it up on a wall. If you're afraid you may fail, then your actions may be bold or aggressive or creative as you need them to be in order to accomplish your goal. Okay, and that's sort of in line with the Teddy Roosevelt thing. Here's a picture of my wife, who is very bold and in this adventure, and particularly with me working long hours as I do, and sometimes the fearless trailblazer just doesn't have a clue. That's the same guy there, not looking so confident as he did before. Okay, so what is it, Dr. Hornbeck? Fearless trailblazing or intrapreneurship? Which is it? Is it an either or? Well, I've been written up in numerous stories, books, blogs as a world-class intrapreneur. And so I guess I'll own up to it, but I do actually prefer the other. So in homage to the person that coined the word, Gifford Pinchot, actually coined the word in '78, and I was already a fearless trailblazer at that point. But he and his wife wrote a white paper titled Intercorporate Intrapreneurship. And here's 4 definitions for you from the person that coined the word. You can't do any better than that. These are intrapreneurs are employees who do for corporate innovation what an entrepreneur does for his or her startup. Entrepreneurs are the dreamers that do, and he elaborates on each one of these statements. Entrepreneurs are self-appointed. That's true. General managers of a new idea. Entrepreneurs are drivers of change to make business a force for good, and that last refers to charity and social endeavors, in case you're trying to figure out what that means. Okay, now he pinpoints 7 qualities of entrepreneurs. And he's very succinct, and I'm not succinct at all, so I'm going to have a whole bunch of qualities: curiosity, action, meaningful purpose, dedication in the face of resistance. And I'm going to tell you why that's so important. The duration of that dedication is probably one of the most defining things. Courage and persistence, whole systems thinking, collaboration. He talks about intrinsically motivated entrepreneurs. They have both characteristic. They're both dreamers and doers. Amen. You got to do that. You got to be very practical, and no job is beneath your dignity, no matter what it is. Okay, and along the way, you do everything that you can. And a self-appointed general manager of the idea. Yes, that's so true. He talks about you need sponsors. I've had my sponsors, and we'll talk about them, and they had a major impact. And of course, the greatest reward that they can give you is freedom and resources. Without that, you don't go. Okay, and then I discovered this wonderful thing here. This is yesterday, of all things. I knew about Tencho, but here's the Intrapreneur's 10 Commandments. Now, for those of you that want to become really good entrepreneurs, you'd like to join a large corporation. I always wanted to be in a large corporation. I'm not at all confident in thinking about a startup or going into business for myself, so that's good. But don't be alarmed now by the very first thing that you're going to see, but it is absolutely true, and I can prove it. Come to work each day willing to be fired. That's the first commandment. And I thought when I saw that, duh, yeah, that's true. Circumvent any orders aimed at stopping your dream. It's like this was, see, this was written some time ago. I've forgotten its actual date. It's been many years. And so I'm doing all of this stuff, and I'm going to tell you about it. And all of the stuff I've written down later, I hadn't read this, but yeah, circumvent any orders. Do any job. You need to make your project work, regardless of your job description. Any job, okay? I've done a lot of laboratory work. I've tidied up labs for, for VPs to come in. I've done anything that I can do anywhere, and I've gone on trips to learn plasma chemistry and anything, whatever is required. I've done plumbing and stuff, and find people to help you. That's been hard for me, but I've been very lucky. Follow your intuition about the people you choose and work only with the best. I feel like more they choose me. Work underground as long as you can. Isn't that great? Publicity triggers corporate immune mechanism. I can't go into the details, but I can tell you that the person that was really providing resources for me had to at one point go underground himself with that too, because I was supposed to be canceled and wasn't. Never bet on a race unless you're running it. Remember, it is easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. Be true to your goals, but be realistic about the ways to achieve them. Isn't that wonderful? Honor your sponsors. Yes. Yes. Okay. Now you've seen why why you might be in jeopardy if you follow my Fearless Trailblazing program that I'm going to outline to you, and it's really great. I mean, I'm not charging anything for this, but you got to read the disclaimer, because the first thing you saw was you could be fired if you follow this program verbatim. Okay, I didn't say it. Tencho said it. Okay. Even with rigorous adherence to the principles contained in Hornbeck's Fearless Trailblazing program, results may vary. Okay, fine, that's the usual. Additionally, there are reported side effects that are likely, somewhat likely, or maybe somewhat unlikely to occur, depending on who you are, the company you work for, and the temperament of your boss and peers. And probably that last part's the most important part of that. Even with complete adherence to the principles of Hornbeck's Fearless Trailblazing program for a minimum time of 25 years, the intangibles of serendipity, luck, and timing may not accrue to your benefit. In that event, remember the famous words of Theodore Roosevelt in his "It's Not the Critics Who Count" speech. The reason I'm reading this for you is I want to make sure that you hear it, and otherwise I don't know that you've actually read it. Negative effects of Hornbeck's Fearless Trailblazing program may include, but are not limited to, the following. When you meet in the hall, your boss forgets your name. You meet in the hall, you forget your boss's name. You meet your boss in the hall, but don't recognize him because he was replaced a year ago with someone who doesn't know you're officially a part of the team. How can that happen? It can happen. Your group's weekly meeting location is kept from you and declared a trade secret. Awesome. Okay. However, if you bravely persevere, someday you may hear those magical words. Some are the following: your name, come up and get your Oscar, or name whatever award or honor that you're seeking. But please don't seek honors or anything, just do it because you're on the trail, it's fun for you, and you're dedicated, and you go for it. And any honors that you achieve, well, that's fine. But for me, a day later, I'm still looking towards my next goal. Okay, so what is it to be a fearless trailblazer? It turns out we're going to see a lot of things in common with the definition of an entrepreneur. The time was 1978. So we're going to continue with our agenda, and first of all, we're going to look at how the DMD chip works. And let's see. Okay, so there's two little tiny digital micromirrors, and this is a silicon chip, and we're going to do a little movie here. That's we're showing the package, window, that silver surface is a couple million micromirrors flipping. Okay, we're going to home in on a couple of them, pop them up, I hope. And they're aluminum micromirrors. They're driven by memory circuits underneath. Into 1 or 0 state drives them on or off. And so if we shine a light on them at the right angle, they simply switch light on or off at some 500,000 times a second. So you can choose how long they're on, how long they're off, and do all sorts of interesting things with them. The overall product that Texas Instruments sells is the chip, the digital signal processor with embedded algorithms, and a high voltage chip for driving. And the algorithms are essential. 1s and 0s are pretty hard on the eye. So if this is a display, you're going to see all kinds of flashes and motion artifacts. And so there's a tremendous investment in algorithms, which the company took upon itself rather than other companies who have been in the business of image processing for a long time. And we are world renowned in that area with many, many, many patents to cover the algorithms. Now, there have been historically two versions of this, a single chip with a color wheel spinning. And there's a very interesting sequence of events that goes on to avoid color and flashes and artifacts. I won't go into that, but that's in the algorithms. And then for the very brightest projectors, like in digital cinema, there are 3 chips, red, green, and blue. Each is dedicated, and the images are combined in a total internal reflection prism, and they go out to the screen. Okay, now we're going to do the Trailblazer centric view, and as I said, lots of people, hundreds of millions of dollars. This is from my viewpoint so that you can later understand the decisions I had to make. There on the left, I'm at Case Western Reserve University in the early 70s, working on a PhD in mechanical engineering in physics. It could have been mechanical, and actually, come to think of it, I wouldn't want that, but because that would have limited my scope a little bit. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but some people claim that I majored in machine shop and handball and studied a little physics while I was in school. Anyway, I joined TI in '73, and we've already been through this. We've had these various periods of time, and right now we're going to do the prehistoric times. In the prehistoric times, and I'll show you later, I made some decisions and refused to do certain things, but I came up with a concept in '76, 3 years later, of a CCD that actually can store charge in 2 separate channels. So this is an imaging device like you would have in a camera, but I can store 2 images, one on top of the other, and I can read that to the output and detect that. And that was demoed in 1978. The beginning then of my micromirror career was in '77. You'll see how we got into that. Again, it's because I refused to do something a certain way, and thank goodness I did. Began a contract in 1977 to do a membrane light modulator. Here's the proposal. And ended up demonstrating a 16 by 16 version and later a 128 by 128 version. here. But that got me into then thinking about how do you do light modulators? This was a nitrocellulose membrane on top of a chip. How would I do micromirrors actually on a chip integrated? And as things would have it, we had someone come along at the right time to fund the effort. We had a program, a reason for doing that, and that began the period of developing analog micromirrors, and how do you build those in a conventional wafer fab, not by the processes at the time. And that was demonstrated in 1984. Oh, and we printed on Polaroid film a message, "Send more money, George," and we sent this up to the North Building, our corporate headquarters. George was George Hallmeyer, father of liquid crystal display technology, our chief technology officer at the time. And he did send more money, indeed. Okay. Age of digital enlightenment really begins when I went out and decided to burn all my bridges, throw away the analog stuff I've been working on, and go digital. We'll talk about the dangers involved in that decision. You see the original photomask design. You see here some patent drawing. You see the first device, a linear array meant for printing, and you'll see some marks on photographic film. And so that was a big event because, believe it or not, 3 years later, TI announces its first product, and if that was all that had happened, but what you'll see is they announced so much more than that just a few months later. So I want to show you just how momentous this was. I knew that this was going to be, I documented the first device operation. There you see the photomask layout and the chip. This is in the IEEE Hall of Fame. So I made a movie, put the device under a dark field microscope with red and green blue cellophane so you could see it flipping in both directions. And there's the integrated circuit. You saw the wires coming down to a bond pad. Now we're moving towards the center, and there their mirrors are flipping and on and off. And now we'll put in the color filters so you can see, yes, they're really flipping both ways. And I'm watching my clock here, and I see we're 25 minutes into this, so I'm going to speed things up. I'm going to terminate. And now let's look at the commercialization period. Now TI is beginning in 1992 is developing everything. There's no one in the world to follow. Liquid crystal technology has different optics. Liquid crystal on silicon, totally different technology. Nobody to follow. And so TI literally has to make engines because nobody knows how to make these, the optics or anything else for them, the algorithms that go in them. And our first original equipment manufacturers were putting skins around, basically a cabinet around there with some controls. And we had our first very big and clunky 27-pound projectors. And so by 1997, those projectors had dropped down to 6 pounds. By the way, there's an integrated circuit. You can see all of the wires coming in. There's the image. In 1998, interestingly, TI and myself won an Emmy Engineering Award already. This was being noticed. And the thing that I'm most proud of all on my fearless trailblazing tour is DLP cinema technology. The world's premiere of digital cinema, the birth of digital cinema, occurred in Burbank, June the 18th, 1999. I'll tell you more about that later. Meanwhile, TI is shrinking the size. We're selling more and more of these products. By 2005, we're down to 1 pound pocket projectors. Pretty cool. And today, we have a range of applications in display and industrial, automotive, and so much more. There's medical and so on. And I've really only recently discovered how much research there is into medical and other applications have nothing to do with displays. Okay, now let's start our very quick tour of how did we get to an Oscar. And so you look and you think about it, wow, 1977, we were doing these membrane things. What if we hadn't been doing those? What if a decision hadn't been made? We would not have gotten on this path, okay? That led to the invention of the Digital Micromirror Device. We're shipping subsystems, and soon we're, believe it or not, we're going off to Hollywood and showing them prototype projectors as if we were even up to the quality of film already. We're not even close at that point, but we're trying. And we have the first digital projection of a movie, Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace. Lucas decides that DLP cinema is good enough for that showing. And here it is, Burbank, California. My wife and I standing, welcome to future of cinema. And boy, where we write DLP cinema, the headlines of the Burbank Theater, Burbank newspaper, Digital Menace, not far, far away. Okay, take off on Star Wars Menace. And there's a shootout. The day before, press conference between film on the right and digital micromirrors on the left. You know, we can't claim we're not mechanical. We got more mechanical moving parts than film has, but we never degrade. It's easy to distribute. And today, every theater in the world has only one technology, DLP cinema. So 3D was enabled basically by this technology, Digital Cinema Initiative, high frame rate. We finally came up with a 4K DLP chip. Our people turned one of these things almost in 6 months. It's like overnight, because we were in intense competition with Sony. We delivered on that. Today, where virtually every theater in the world is DLP cinema. And the thing that happened was in 2015, let me get through this little self-aggrandizement here. I love those words. Dr. Hornbeck, will you come up and get your Oscar? I love that. Okay. Our family's down here watching, clapping. It's great. But the unique thing about this was that for the first time in the Academy's history, a technology and the engineers that created that technology, you can't give these awards to companies. That's not allowed, to individuals. We won at all 3 levels. That's never been done before. Furthermore, scientific and technical Oscars are very rare. There's less than 1 of those a year. So don't get the idea there's all these categories. There isn't. There's only, in fact, the year before there hadn't been any, okay? I'm sorry, the year before there had been. It was for film and basically for film going away. It was to the entire film processing industry. This was a huge achievement, up and down, okay? And I am so proud of our people. Okay, now I've set the stage, and we're going to do the first episode. Okay, and I see that we've got 15 minutes. Hey, this is going to work out fine. Okay, there I am in the machine shop. Okay, I don't have a clue. I don't know what I want to do. A PhD in physics. I'm working on Fermi surfaces of magnesium lithium alloys. I'm building electronics. I'm building little widgets to go into a liquid helium thing, superconducting magnet. I don't know nothing about semiconductors and very little about the real world. Okay, well, that's the way it is. That's my life. I did work my junior year, between my junior and senior years at NASA Lewis Research Center in Cleveland. So this is Case Western Reserve in Cleveland. And they had this huge budget, billions of dollars for the Apollo moon landing program. And so I said, okay, fine. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to get a PhD, a master's, my PhD. And when I get out, I'll work for NASA. Gee, I'll get to stay in Cleveland. just what I like to do. I don't like moving around. I like to stay at the same university. Never wanted to stay at the university to teach. Oh, research lab, look at their budget. People that I knew were either laid off or they were hanging on. They were not even accepting applications at that time. I'm blocked. Okay, fine. There's a recession. Well, I finally got an offer to go out to Lawrence Livermore Labs in California. They somehow got the idea that I knew something about computers. I know zip, rejection. Okay, so I had this postdoc connection, postdoc who went on to work in TI Central Research Laboratory in their bubble memory group. So he gets me an interview. Great. I had no idea what bubble memories are all about. I get rejected. I think it was correctly perceived that not only did I not know what bubble memories were, but that I had indeed majored in machine shop and handball and only minored in physics. So at least that's my story. And I'm going to tell you that I finally did get an offer. But if I had gone into either one of these two other groups, and that was a possibility, we wouldn't be on a path to an Oscar. So let me just tell you the story quickly. I was rejected, but a few weeks later, I get a call from someone I'd never met who hadn't seen my talk, hadn't interviewed with, and he said, introduced himself, and he said, I'd like to offer you a job doing CCD image technology development. And one of my characteristics that I claim as a fearless trailblazer is if you don't know something, you ask. And I said, what does CCD stand for? Charge coupled device. Oh, yes, I know now. Okay. I don't know a whole lot about that. Now he's getting very indignant. You don't have to know. I've been instructed to hire you. Turns out that I did an interview with the Central Research Lab Director who was a theoretical physicist. And I think he did correctly perceive, he saw my talk, the first talk I gave, that I had indeed majored in machine shop and handball and minored in physics. But what he saw was that I could bring a lot of things together, a lot of technologies together and deliver. Again, nothing was beneath my dignity in terms of doing it, whatever it took to get the job done. And boy, did he guess right. And so we're on a path to an Oscar. Now, these groups that I was blocked from, I didn't get an offer from them. They acted as resources. So there are 3 CCD groups, one in memory, one in signal processing, the other this is for camera development, okay? I learned characterization, and we received a proposal to do a backside illuminated. You thin the CCD and you illuminate it from the backside of the silicon. We were doing that for other reasons, but to develop a moving target indicator, okay, using backside illuminated silicon, okay. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I said, okay, we can do that from the front side. I'm sorry, we can do that from the back side, but we are not going to do a collection of the, I'm sorry, I get too technical here. We're going to do backside illumination, but we're not going to use the architecture that was proposed. And so I developed a novel architecture for which I have 3 patents. It's a way of storing images one on top of the other that allows you to do many more things than we would have been able to do with the proposal, and delivered the first ever stratified channel CCDs. Well, with that in my background, now I'm an expert on backside CCD addressing of all things. And so we sent a proposal to DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has provided a lot of funding for many universities over the years. to do a backside CCD address deformable mirror spatial light modulator. That's a mouthful, but basically to input electrical signal to a CCD and dump that charge, do the reverse of collecting charge with a CCD, dump that, spread the charge out, let it diffuse over to the other side and be collected under the implants that are under a deformable mirror device. And so I can modulate pixel by pixel, one CCD pixel corresponding to one DMD pixel. Well, fortunately, DARPA rejects this, and the head of DARPA at the time was George Halmar, who was going to become our chief technology officer very shortly. Interesting, huh? And so we propose to NVL, Night Vision Laboratory. They say, okay, go. We get the proposal in. I wouldn't do it. In fact, they had to hire 2 graduate students to come in, and they worked on their master's thesis to do it the way that we proposed it. And I proposed front side transistor addressing. It's a hybrid structure where I take a metallized membrane, but I put it down on a silicon chip with addressing. Now we're on the path to the Oscars, the 16 by 16, the 128 by 128. Look what had to happen. It had to be rejected by DARPA. I had to reject the Night Vision Laboratory. Now we're on the path. The fellow that was in charge of DARPA comes to TI, reviews me and this program, and he got the idea that I was probably trying to build a display on a chip, when really this was for Fourier transforms and target recognition purposes at the time. But he challenged me. Many good men have been crushed by the effort to do a display on a chip. Wow. Wow, I thought this is great. Nobody tells me what I can't do, yada, yada. And I put that up on my blackboard. And I said, well, he apologizes, which he in essence did some years later. I'll take it off the blackboard. Okay. Well, there are 2 critical decisions that had to be made along the way to get to where we are today. So we're in the analog dark ages, and we had to make a decision to go monolithic, meaning that you have to use semiconductor manufacturing technology and put aluminum micromirrors directly on top of that, okay? Well, there's a whole bunch of technologies that can do these micromechanical things, including my own, okay, that I rejected. I put a lot of time and effort in developing manufacturing methods and have many patents for that. Not many, I'm sorry. At the time, I had 3 patents that acted as an IP deterrent, intellectual property deterrent. In 1986, it demonstrated a 2400 by 1 analog spatial light modulator for printing applications. And George Halmar, okay, started supporting my work. I had an immense amount of freedom to do as I chose to do. Okay, I'm failing. The analog, not very good, not very uniform. At least it's on a chip. But look at the analog world. I wrote a paper, 43-page paper on history of electronic projection display technology. All of the different approaches over time, trying to do electronic projection for cinema, okay? Then we had my own approach, analog, and we have all of these others, okay? And basically, I'm saying, okay, look, analog doesn't work for many, many reasons. If I abandon analog, look what I'll have. If I can touch these mirrors down on little rotation stops, I can have precise angles, so I can modulate like with precision of time division, be very uniform and bright displays. Disadvantages, I know the mirrors will stick. We knew that already. We'll figure that out. So this is burning your bridges before you have a solution in hand. That's a very important characteristic. And I filed a patent application. It's very extensive, and it is a fundamental patent for the technology. So now we have the fundamental patent for the basic digital concept, plus we have the manufacturing techniques and IP. And so I'm the single name inventor in these various areas that really gave TI an opportunity then to deliver on all the things that had to be done before multiple competitors came in, which is almost always the case for technologies, okay? 1992, the beginning of massive investments. Let me just show you here for the charge coupled device invented at RCA in 1969. The first patent application filed was very weak, okay? The people that filed the patent application went on to get a Nobel Prize in physics. Wow, it was very weak. Competitors moved in immediately, including TI, and I was part of that, okay? I knew intimately. They didn't have a whole lot going at RCA, and we all moved in. Sony made massive investments, okay? And eventually they were the ones that succeeded the most, and RCA stopped production. Boyle and Smith get their Nobel Prize, and the poor Sony team that made the massive investments were referred to as the expensive good for nothings. Okay, but at least the team got the credit for that. Let me show you what happened over here. Now, over here, instead of having the technology just half-baked and some a patent application file, I already had developed extensive IP for the manufacturing. I then had the patent seminal application, filed additional patent applications to cover other things, and it was only until 1992 that TI began massive investments, okay? So by then, it was really difficult for anybody to come in and challenge us, as RCA had been challenged by TI, Fairchild, Sony. Okay, so I was elected a TI fellow in 1993 on the promise of, wow, this is wonderful, but boy, did we have the losses, greater than $500 million. First products, finally, in the long run, no competitors, growing number of applications, strong business. Now, just like Sony's team had got a lot of bad publicity, the expensive good for nothings, I got a lot of bad publicity. I was very popular in 1993 when I got elected TI fellow, but I found in a blog that someone had said, I guess they're referring to the election now. And in my value, I guess it's the absolute value of your impact on the bottom line that's the most important. In other words, if you take the absolute value of $300 or $400 million loss at the time, wow, that's a really positive contribution. We were not popular. I was not popular at the time. It goes without saying. Okay. Now, this period of time leading up to the first products has been written up in a section of From Wild West to Modern Life by Wally Rines. And I encourage you just to go out and get it. The whole thing is fascinating. I think it's like 70 or 80 pages. You can download it for free. And page 24, Stubbornness Captures a Disruptive Technology, leads to an Academy Award. I worked with Wally in 1973. He was in the Central Research Labs. He went on to become an executive VP at Texas Instruments. And went on to a higher fame than that, if that's possible. But he has an intimate knowledge of my fearless trailblazing, my early days. Okay, so what happened then from the invention to the decision that, oh, we've got this two-line display, or actually it's for laser printing for airline ticket printing. Why would the company want to invest hundreds of millions of dollars? And a whole bunch of things came together in this period of time. And we had a company we never heard of before, Rank Primar, division of Rank Corporation, saying that they want to do theater projection with this thing. DARPA contract. These are small, tiny investments compared to what TI actually invested. But it bolstered the confidence of TIers that this is valuable. This is external confirmation of our value. We had a product. We had a 2-line HDTV demo, which we put 2 chips together and said, okay, this is the first line of a high definition. Here's the last line, and it's really easy to fill in the missing 1,024 lines. I personally was never there for one of those demos. I have no idea what those guys were talking about, but no, it's not easy. I had a new technique that I went back to the 1890s to figure out how to do, and had some more key patents. So the summer of Irrational Exuberance, and that was 1990, and they turned it on at the board of directors meeting. Someone said, now I'm not saying that the DMD is another integrated circuit invention like Jack Kilby's integrated circuit invention, but on the other hand, I'm not saying that it's not. Okay, and so we launched and created a digital imaging group and the first pixel architecture and the first colored image with many diagonal defects. Things are not going well. And things were going downhill permanently, except unless I intervened. And the pixel did not have mirrors covering the structure, so the contrast is very poor. Okay, I had already filed the disclosure and had demonstrated a hidden hinge where the mirror is on top of that structure. Okay. And nevertheless, the inertia dictated that we already know how to do this, that's what we're going to do, but we knew the contrast ratio would never be high enough. I couldn't understand. And so I went very high in a corporation. I'm not going to tell anybody, maybe I will in my will or something, how high I had to go, but very high to get that decision reversed. And again, please read my disclaimer, because more than likely you will be fired for such an action. However, very quickly, within weeks, we were manufacturing the first Hornbeck hidden hinge devices, okay, HH for hidden hinge, and we soon had our first seamless image. We no longer saw all of these gaps and everything, and we're ready to go. And who's our competitor? 1996, we're launching. But a year earlier, Epson has their transmissive, and that HTPS is high temperature polysilicon. It's a type of transistor that you can put on high temperature polysilicon. I believe it was on quartz, liquid crystal device. Now they had little holes cut in there so you get light through, because it's a transmissive device, and so you can imagine how pixelated little dots of light were up on the screen. They got a year lead on us. We have our hidden hinge device, thanks to me intervening, and we make our market entry. They got us beat, better brightness, and still better contrast, okay, than we had even with our hidden hinge. So we struggle, but we take market share. And why did we take market share? Because we had a seamless image. So we got it half right. We have seamless. They got it half right. Better brightness, better contrast. We went on for another round or 2 or 3 or 4. A decade later, Epson and TI were still slugging it out. Education market and others, each one making the other even better. But we're the only digital micromirror technology. Okay, we're going to have some time. This is just for fun, I've listed some things, and there are so many things, and you've already seen what Pinchot has to say and the characteristics, and you can go out and read stuff. He's written prolifically on this. It's amazing. I haven't. But I listed some things. So, okay, we began development in 77. I established this foundational IP for the manufacturing, then made the decision to go digital, more foundational IP, and I only have a picture of myself up there, but please remember that we won. We did a clean sweep there at the Oscars. It was amazing, amazing. Okay, at the top I said fearless trailblazer. Well, you can read in fearless intrapreneurship. And by the way, I read some of this Pinchot stuff just last night, so I was amazed at how close his description is of my experience. So the main thing is duration, dedication, perseverance. You have to have the freedom to explore, high tolerance for ambiguity. In other words, you don't know if you're on the right path. You don't know if you're ever going to see the end of it. You don't know if you're going to have a job in the next year. Okay, high tolerance for ambiguity. Okay, but if you can stay in the game long enough, okay, you're going to find some champions that are going to notice you. Okay, now remember that you're losing a lot of money. You got a lot of people working really, really hard. Okay, this isn't a game. Okay, but the intangibles are serendipity, luck, and timing. If you can stay in the game long enough, if TI can stay in the game long enough, I'm going to have a champion come along. We're going to have some other people come along, and things are going to move ahead. For the entrepreneur, okay, this is what he's looking for. I don't care how clever, how long, this is what he's looking for. So I said, if you spend 25 years and serendipity, luck, and timing don't accrue to your benefit, well, that was in my disclaimer. I just put down a couple of things here. Charting your constant self-education, interdisciplinary thinking and decision-making. Interdisciplinary, you've got to become an interdisciplinary, and that means self-education. That means going off and studying surface chemistry when chemistry was the worst thing you ever had in college. Charting your course, I wrote this down one time. I said I better put a date on it. By group consensus is like following a meandering cow path. You'll eventually get somewhere that may not be where you really want to go. Okay. All right, now just for fun, I'm just not going to cover all of these. I'm going to leave each one of these up for a minute. These are just some takeaways that I've had over the years, and you can freeze frame or whatever and read them. I haven't published anything. You got to have an attention span of decades. I mean this. Attention span of decades. So that means you're not out for fame and instant glory or whatever, or you just stay with it. Okay? A Charlie Brown-like belief. We'll talk about that in a minute. You get delight out of just thinking about all of these things, and you're absolutely fearless when you think you're on the right trail. If you're not, you may want to burn some bridges, as I've done. I was on the wrong trail with the analog. Right? Okay, next page. I've already talked about this. Living with ambiguity. Now, it's interesting, there's a whole bunch of articles out there on me as a world-class entrepreneur, and most of them suggest that I was a manager and I had people, and I don't have any managers. I didn't even manage myself very well. I was an individual contributor, okay? And for decades, I funded by the chief technology officer, and I did what I wanted to do, okay? Be wary of technology silos, that's very important. Listen to your own intuition, but clear it with Mother Nature. Don't do anything that's against Mother Nature. Make sure you understand what she's telling you. And Always measure your success by what you've done lately. Otherwise, you get really, really lazy thinking about all your wonderful accomplishments. You should discount those within weeks of their occurring, including an Oscar if you get one. Okay, and I think this is the last page. I was really happy to see that Pinchot considered this here, not considered a team player. I didn't change any of this stuff because I read Pinchot last night, to which I say, too bad. Okay. Team consensus is not the way to go. If you don't go along with the team consensus, you will not be considered a team player. That just goes with the territory. Quick course corrections, like Magoo, the cartoon character, self-taught. You know, I take 3 times longer than the average person. I think I left out footnote 3. Could it be that I have a, I think this was, could it be that I have a learning disability? I'll answer that question. The last page, cannot emphasize this enough. A multidisciplinary challenge, like the MD technology, requires interdisciplinary thinking. If you can get the team to think interdisciplinary, that's great. Sometimes that's really hard. An individual sometimes can do a better job of incorporating various concepts, even though he doesn't understand them too deeply, than an entire team can that's not thinking from an interdisciplinary viewpoint. I love this at UT Dallas. My favorite person, Professor Hobson Wildenthal, who invited me to UT Dallas to leave TI and retire, which I said I would never do. And he says, there's no such thing as a genius, only someone with an overactive imagination and a lot of time on his hands, and boy, did he nail that. I drove a 77 Chevy pickup up and down Highway 75 in the Dallas area, 350,000 miles over 10 years. And a Wall Street Journal article said it's the best think tank that TI ever had. That's where I had most of my ideas. A lot of time on my hands and overactive imagination. And there's my 2 favorite characters. I'll let you read that. And I think we're out of time. So I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hornbeck. We appreciate you sharing your time, talent, and resources with the attendees and community at large. Thank you and have a nice afternoon.